Have you ever noticed how some people who don't make that much money somehow seem completely calm about their finances, while other people making twice as much are constantly stressed, constantly broke, constantly one car repair away from a meltdown? It's not about income. I used to think it was, but it's not. There's actually a specific number, a small one, that quietly determines which category you fall into, and it's not your salary, it's not your savings account. It's something most people walk past a dozen times a day without even noticing. It's $50. Here's what I mean. Somewhere around the $50 mark, there's an invisible line in how people make decisions. Below that line, purchases feel automatic, almost invisible. You don't think twice about it. A meal out, a subscription, a little upgrade here or there. It doesn't feel like real money, so you don't treat it like real money. Above that line, something shifts. Suddenly you pause. You think about it. You may even sleep on it. And that difference, that one invisible threshold, is doing more to shape your financial future than almost anything else in your life. Let me explain why this matters so much more than people realize. The human brain is bad at tracking small, repeated decisions. It's actually really good at tracking big, rare ones. If someone asked you to spend $2,000 right now, you'd feel it. You'd think about it for days. But if that same $2,000 gets broken up into 40 separate $50 purchases spread across a few months, your brain barely registers it at all. Same total. Completely different psychological experience. This is why people who feel like they're being careful with money can still end up broke. They're vigilant about the big stuff and completely blind to the dozens of small decisions quietly draining them in the background. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because this isn't really about cutting out $50 purchases. That's not the lesson here. The actual lesson is about what wealthy, financially secure people do differently with that threshold. They don't ignore it. They've trained themselves to treat the small stuff with the same intentionality as the big stuff, just faster. It's not deprivation, it's awareness. There's a real difference between someone who never buys anything fun and someone who simply knows, in real time, what their money is doing. Let's actually run the math, because the math is where this stops being a vague feeling and starts being undeniable. Say you've got 5 small decisions a week that land right around that $50 range: food delivery instead of cooking, an impulse buy online, a subscription you forgot about, a coffee run that turns into a full breakfast. None of these feel significant on their own, but 5 of them a week at $50 each is $250. That's $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. Just from decisions so small, your brain doesn't even flag them as spending. Now here's the part that should really get your attention. If that $12,000 had been invested instead, even at a modest 8% average return, in 20 years, it would not be $12,000 anymore. It's not even close. Compounding turns that quiet leak into 6 figures over time. 6 figures from money you never consciously decided to spend in the first place. It just slipped out the side door while you were focused on the big stuff. This is the part most people miss completely. They think building wealth is about one big decision: get the better job, buy the right house, make the smart investment, and sure, those matter. But the $50 rule is sneakier and arguably more powerful, because it's not one decision, it's hundreds of them happening every single month, mostly on autopilot. So what do financially secure people actually do differently here? It's not complicated, but it is uncomfortable at first. They slow down, just slightly, right around that threshold. Not for a $5 coffee, not for a $15 lunch, but the moment a purchase crosses into that $40, $50, $60 zone, they ask one simple question: would I still want this if I had to pay for it in cash, right now, out of my pocket? That tiny pause is the entire mechanism. It's not about saying no every time. Plenty of times the answer is still yes, and that's fine. The point isn't restriction. The point is that the decision becomes conscious instead of automatic. And here's the identity shift that happens once you start doing this consistently. You stop seeing money as something that just disappears and start seeing it as something you direct. That changes how you feel about everything else in your financial life. You're not white-knuckling your way through a strict budget. You're just paying attention at exactly the spot where most people stop paying attention. There's also a bigger pattern hiding underneath all of this. The people who struggle financially almost always struggle in the middle zone, not the extremes. Nobody's going broke buying coffee, and most people aren't reckless enough to blow their savings on something huge without thinking it through first. It's that middle ground, the $40, $50, $60, $70 purchases, that quietly does the damage because it's not just big enough to matter and just small enough to ignore. So if you actually want to know where your money is going, don't start by looking at your biggest expenses. You probably already know what those are. Start by looking at the cluster of purchases sitting right around that $50 mark over the last month. That's where the real leak usually is. That's the number that's quietly deciding whether you end up stressed about money for the next 10 years or sitting comfortably while everyone around you wonders how you make it look so easy. It was never really about how much you make. It's about whether you're paying attention to the exact spot where most people stop.